the investors become fearful as to whether the property is going to be expropriated, things are going to be nationalized. As we have seen many African countries, when they took power, they would nationalize a lot of things, including essentially nationalization. In one breath, it could be beneficial to those who historically have been deprived, but the investor, it's a monumental loss overnight when that occurs. So those kind of things which the private sector are really concerned about, and they don't want them to occur. And they want, when rules and regulations and policies are in place, not to be suddenly changed to that detriment. So they've echoed those, and that's why you then ask yourself, why are governments invited to a CEO event? And that's when you then appreciate that neither can exist without the other. Governments want development, and they can't accomplish those without the private sector. The private sector wants stability and growth. They can't accomplish that if our governments behave in a way which is inconsistent with that pursuit.
One of the things that always crops up when we talk about Africa is the issue of corruption. Did it come up?
Corruption arose. It is something which historically has engulfed African governments. You see, most African governments, when they took their independence, because most of us were some were under Francophone governments, some were Anglo under the English governments. Most of them, when there was a transition of power, from the colonial governments to the
national governments,
yes, a lot of them got engulfed in corruption. I can't pin a finger as to what the cause was, but Botswana has always been singled out as less in terms of the magnitude of corruption. Unstable government, we've always been cited as an example. But you name Ethiopia, you name all of these other countries. They've been engulfed all the way to you look at the
north of Africa. Yes.
You look at the period of President Nasser when he was leading Egypt, Muammar Gaddafi's time. All of them have been cited, and examples are given, evidence is produced to show how high-handed some of the governments were. You go to Charles Taylor in Liberia. Central Republic, Central African Republic.
Right. Now, Botswana has been cited as 100% good. Okay, not 100%, but good comparatively, in terms of fighting corruption, in terms of sustainability and lack of, disruptions with government. Yes. But that doesn't mean that you as the minister, of course, responsible in this particular sector, you can be complacent with regards to issues of corruption. What are you doing? What is your ministry doing to ensure that your industry is listened to with regards to issues of fighting corruption?
Domestically, one single ministry cannot deal. I work hand in hand with all other ministries. We are one government, as His Excellency the President has pronounced time and again. But of course, the lead ministry in fighting it is those who are equipped with the resources to arrest, investigate, and prosecute, which is a ministry under Kgafela Thomas Mmusi. But we urge our officers to refrain. We try to teach, we render education for them to desist from it. We show the repercussions of it, that they may think that they are attaining an immediate benefit out of it, but in the long run, or in the long term, or in the short term, we find that your own relative, your own loved one becomes a victim, suffers untold hardship in consequence of what you thought was a quick gain by way of corruption. And we see things not being, construction not taking place in a manner which is expected, and road infrastructure if it's not in a good state, it means movement of people and goods are affected, and your brother and sister who trades may well find themselves unable to access Maun, for instance, access Shakawe, access Kasane because of your corruption. For instance, we have corruption, for instance, in procurement, where if you embark on it, we find that it's not being optimally, it's not being put to the optimum benefit of the rest of the population, and it then exacerbates your own brother and your own sister's poverty, who then find themselves unable to enjoy. So we teach. The most we can do is to teach from our end, but those who are to investigate, and they got to do it in earnest and get serious about it. Our courts need to be swift in dealing with these matters. Right. It's no point in being when a corrupt activity is under prosecution. It takes ages for it to be. We need to dispose of them as quickly as possible. We need our jails to be populated. And I'm not saying that it's an ideal thing that jails must be populated, but if corruption is endemic, yes, we should then see jails populated, find people perching in jails on account of that corruption. But, right, but if you cast your eyes in our jails in Botswana, you'll find that you don't have the population of those sitting there on account of corruption, relative to the corruption we hear about occurring in the business environment or in the government environment. Is so little.
Now, we've in this country we've talked about PPP, public-private partnerships. To what extent were they discussed at this gathering?
They were also at the forefront of the discussions. For instance, we spoke a great deal about infrastructure, the lack thereof in Africa, and in consequence of it lacking or being so minimal. Retarding the degree to which we are developing as Africa. Yeah. So rail infrastructure was one of those which it was thought could be embarked upon or delivered by way of PPPs between governments and the private sector and financiers. For instance, we here in Botswana had occasion to enter a great deal with Transnet. Because we are indebted to Botswana insofar as providing infrastructure, rail infrastructure, the Mamabulele Palale Railway, rail infrastructure, the Transfrontier rail infrastructure leading into Namibia. We're indebted in that regard. So these are infrastructure that we need to deliver in public-private partnerships with it's not only that, we spoke a great deal about air transportation also, which also complements the rail infrastructure and the road infrastructure. That too is an important aspect that we could perhaps improve, with public-private partnerships between governments and the private sector and financiers. So that too, it's a part of the arsenals that which we have within our sites with which to deliver this connectivity that is necessary. We spoke about the importance of power, because internet connectivity, we have all moved to e-commerce. E-commerce is dependent upon us being resolute in the development of our digital space, but the digital space itself is dependent upon stable and availability of power. So it's a web. It's like a human body, say. Yeah. They complement each other. One, you focus on one and less focus on the other, you may find yourselves limping. So right. It's a conversation.
I'm running out of time, Minister,
yes,
but I'm going to ask you to be very brief with this response to this one. You've been in Rwanda, you've met CEOs there. We've got the HLCC here in Gaborone. What is the next step for you? What happens after this?
Rwanda, if we were to draw my attention specifically to Rwanda, I met the minister, my counterpart. We owe each other the signing of a memorandum of understanding. We owe each other the removal of the requirement of Rwandans carrying a visa in order to come into Botswana. They have removed visa requirements. And President Ruto said in his country, in Kenya, he has removed for all Africans visas. So we find that an European carrying a French passport moves much more smoothly in Africa than an African within Africa. So we were asked questions by interviewers, is this an indication that Africans, you don't trust each other, you're not yet ready? You know, they brought, we learned the visa arrangement from the Europeans, they've discarded it, but then we have retained it. It seems that the question was motivated by that, that are we not ready? We are not ready, we seem not to be ready as Africans, we don't trust each other. So that's the engagement we have with Rwanda, but we are hoping that we will conclude it very quickly, so we can, because we noticed that we have very little trade between between Botswana and Rwanda. And I learned a great deal out of Rwanda, the ability to implement and get results very quickly. Turnaround times, they've really shortened them. And we need to do likewise here, likewise in Botswana. It should be a thing of the past to take a couple of months for anything to be accomplished, including a regulatory impact assessment. I have an appetite for regulatory impact assessment, because when you bring in a regulation or a policy, it must be embraced. And if you don't subject it to that assessment, it then doesn't get embraced. But my biggest challenge in Botswana was the slowness with which it was to be done. It seems to be susceptible to taking years, and that is not. We need to leapfrog.
Lovely. We're going to have to leave it there, Minister.
Yes,
unfortunately, we've run out of time, but all the best. Trade and Industry Minister Mmusi Kgafela, thank you so much for coming through to the Daybreak. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, news, don't move.
So MasterCard Foundation, we launched what we call Young Africa Works. Most of you would know that Africa, in a few years' time, will have what we call the youngest population globally. And in that regard, the foundation came up with a strategy, or what we call our North Star. So what we want to do as a foundation is that by 2030, we want to enable 30 million young women and men to access dignified and fulfilling work. As a foundation, we believe in African institutions. That's why we made a choice. The choice of having University of Botswana and other African partners is very, very deliberate. We believe that African institutions are the ones that are going to drive innovation, transformation, and sustain our goal of pushing young Africans into dignified and fulfilling work.
The initiation, made possible through the generous support of the MasterCard Foundation, truly represent a collaborative effort between the University of Botswana and several esteemed partners across the continent, including Africa, Nazarene University, the University of Ghana, Data Innovators, Timile Consultants, and the African Evaluation Association.
We need dimensions of different types of research in Africa, and therefore please start putting together that big pot where you're going to draw to finance these people to actually expand. For instance, if you do these protocols, maybe departments have to grow. Maybe you need more heads of departments. Maybe you need other types of people. So please, in your scheme of things, I can see no less than 20 years of financing of this type of work.
In terms of operationalizing all these tools, we have what we call thematic working groups. Thematic working groups are a form of a structure or a tool where you have government, civil society, and the private sector coming together to drive national development. When you talk of our national development plans, currently we are developing NDP, National Development Plan 12. In theory, all those plans are supposed to be around the table. explaining together. But the same also has to apply when it comes to implementation. We have to implement together at national, because there are national documents. And the same also goes when it comes to evaluation, to make sure that what we intended to implement indeed is actually happening.
That evaluation becomes relevant for the different sectors, such that indigenous knowledge systems in these various sectors can inform the methodologies and the frameworks and the ethics that we use when we do evaluation. We believe that when you do evaluation in the health sector, we believe that there are some ethical principles that come from the culture that should inform the health sector, that should inform how we do evaluation in the health sector.